morning, everyone. Welcome to Gary's Travels and Adventures. Sorry it's been a while since I made a video, but here we are on May 6th in Chloride, New Mexico. We're going to check out the small historic town, look at some of the older structures that are still there. The town was basically abandoned in the 60s and resurrected when Mr. Edmonds purchased a couple of buildings there. In the 90s, the general store was reopened, and when Mr. Edmonds went inside, basically it was like it had been left just the same way it was back in the 60s, and a little bit of cleanup, put everything back in its place, and it looks just like it did back then. So let's go check it out. Okay, all right, here we're gonna go for a walk around, check out some of the old stuff that's sitting around here. Building next to it used to be the bar and dance hall. This is the back side of it. Go look at some of this old equipment that's sitting here in the middle. Inside. Look at the museum. There's some of the old mining equipment and stuff that they used here in town. Really cool. Some old cabins. You can actually rent these and stay in them. Okay, we're inside the general store now, and this is Mr. Edmonds, and he's gonna give us a little bit of history on the museum and tell some stuff about chloride. Good morning, Mr. Edmonds.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm cold and tired.
A little chilly.
This museum, this building, was built as a pioneer store in 1880 by a Canadian. His name was Douglas, James Douglas. He was a lunger. He had tuberculosis. I don't think he was out here for the mines. I think he was out here for his health. But he built the store when the mine first found silver up the canyon. He made ponderosa pine logs. It's about 10 miles up there where there's forest with this kind of timber, so that's where he had to get them. Had to fight the Indians for him, we're told. He ran the store all through the boom years of 1896. 1896, when the boom was over with, he went to Hillsborough and built a building, which still stands. This one was leased up for a few years. In 1908, it was purchased by the James family. The Jameses come in 1882 with 6 kids, 3 boys and 3 girls. Oldest boy was 10, the youngest girl was 2. Mr. James was killed 4 years later in a mining accident. Mrs. James became incapacitated almost immediately. The oldest boy, 16 years old, incorporated the James family as the James brothers, and they became very prosperous. By the time he was 25 years old, they owned virtually everything around here. He had people in the mines working, whatever was left in the mines. He had some timbering going on. He had put together a whale of a big ranch. His name was Edward James. In 1923, Edward had a young son, Edward Jr. They decided to send him back east to get educated. I think Edward Jr. was about 13 years old at that time. Anyway, they sealed the store up with boards and tin over all the doors and windows, left all the furnishings in here, left the merchandise in here, a little bit of cash in the cash drawer, sent him back to school. Edward got educated as a physicist. Not much call for physicists in Chloride.
Yeah.
He worked other projects. He didn't come back. I met him many years later. I think about 1985, somewhere in there. Bought the building from him. Been closed for 74 years when I bought it. So it took us about 3 years to clean it up, make it into a museum, and this is what you see. This is the interior of what's probably a very, very typical frontier store. The post office, right behind you, was built in, was opened in 1881. The postal people tell me that sign in front would have been delivered around the turn of the century. The boards in the back and the wall, the boxes on the wall in back were typical post offices from that period of time. So the thing to do, we tell people, just kind of look around to see things that your great-grandmother used and your grandmother, and you'll see some things that your mother used. Some of the boxes are still here today. It's kind of my story.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to walk around and film a little bit of it, and then,
Okay, do that.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. If you have questions about something, as you go, I'll try to answer it.
Okay. This is the original ledger.
That's the original ledger. That's those pages there, particular pages there, 1881, and those two men, each owed almost $500. At $1 a day, that's an awful lot of money to owe the store. Now they had a problem. These buildings tended to burn down. If you turn around here, I'll show you the replacement for that. These buildings tend to burn down, and those guys would come in and instead of $500, they'd say, here's the $50 I owe you. This thing was made by McCaskey in Ohio. It's a fireproof credit system. When it's closed down, this door comes down, that last twist, and sucks it up tight, makes this a fairly airtight connection, and it would be somewhat airtight. The man could leave it in the store. The way it works is, the storekeeper writes his customers' names here. Here's Nat Montoya, and he gives them a number, in this case number 30. If Nat or Mrs. Nat came in and did the shopping, they know the money's going to go on a tab. So when they get done shopping, they look up here and see number 30. You're going to take her bill there, close this down, look for the right page. They raise this up. Under this mouse strap, label 30, it'd be like this one, except it's label 30 would be Montoya's bills. Now when we open this up, we found this in here. That's May 8th, 1911. It's written to Alejandro Salas. It's for 20 cents worth of chocolate and 5 cents worth of cheese. And he owes me money. That being in there. Now the business papers could be stored in this. Next one is similar, but it's got more storage. And there's a lock here. We assume that if the operator wants the beer next door in the saloon, he can push this up, lock it, and quick can run the store, but he can't get in to see how they're doing. This came out about the turn of the century. When batteries become available, about 1913 or 1914, the same company made this to fit this machine. This runs on two rather large dry cells, 1.5 volts each. I made a power supply to plug it in. When I had it plugged in, had power on it. This is a combination. If you get it right, it's a wired in combination. If you get that right, a bell back there rings, the cash drawer flies open, and this is a paper tape ratchet. It spins paper out on here, you wrote on here, this is clerk, item description, and cost. And that was 2-page, you could give one to the customer, and you could keep one.
Oh,
pretty neat for back then.
very neat. Very neat.
Newspapers printed upstairs. That's some of the print stuff that was left over scattered up there. It's called the Black Ridge News from about 1881 to 1896.
An old dentist chair.
It's a dentist office, dentist chair, yep. That would have been in the barber shop. Barbers generally did dental work. Crawford was made in Winston. Winston was called Fairview at that time. But 1918, when the flu went through, Asian flu went through, they had a mortuary there and a casket factory, and they made a 3 foot, 5 foot, and 7 foot.
Wow.
That fits everybody.
Interesting.
That's an assay display of ore samples. His case, some of his minerals, his equipment are up on top and down at the bottom. At the end of that table, that's assay equipment. Those memorials are our two favorite people whom we got here in 1977. There were 7 old timers here. One was Raymond Schmidt, that man there, born in 1897, died in 1996. Almost 100 years old, and he was my favorite guide. And the lady next to him, Cassie Hobbs. Cassie Hobbs was one of 12 children born in a wagon. Family traveling with covered wagons. They had 2 wagons. She built her own house, made her own furniture, made all of her own clothes, became a painter, carpenter, dressmaker, everything. Made her own shoes. Those are all samples of things she made. She made furniture that filled her house. This is a sample of her paintings that she put on the wall, her watercolors. She was working on that dress the day we met her. My wife asked her where her pattern was, and she said, I never worked from a pattern. She's got 3 or 4 or 5, 6 sets of purses, gloves, hats, shoes, all of that. She had no education, never went to school.
A lot of very interesting items left in here. I'd like to thank you for your time.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
next time I'll probably know your name.
Gary. Yes, sir.
I keep looking for Victor.
This is the front part of the old bar, saloon, dance hall. You got a front of the old general store, which is now a museum. Well, that's it for our trip to historic Chloride, New Mexico. And if you enjoyed that video, please hit subscribe and the notification button. That way you're notified every time I put a video out. And I'd like to thank you for coming along for the ride. And that's it from Gary's Travels and Adventures. Until next time, take care. Bye.